Hi guys! Today I want to talk about English versus German books, and by that I mean both the differences I've noticed in like German versus English language books, as well as sort of my personal experience and my personal preferences, because I think it's a very legitimate question what language I would like to read in and what is easier for me and all of that. So I wanted to get into that a little bit. The first thing I noticed is that actually in English language books, and this is probably surprising to no English reader ever, but I was actually surprised by this, is that English books start with like the first page, which German books don't do. They start with a number, usually 7, 9, or 11 at the beginning. So this one starts with page number 9, and I think the counting starts on the first sort of inserted page. I think it starts with this one, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9, which is very confusing. But yeah, that's the first thing I noticed that like quite surprised me. I also noticed that there's different ways of putting like quotation marks or showing that someone is speaking. In this one, it's like these brackets, these like arrow thingies, 2 of them, at the beginning and at the end of a verbal sentence. See, that was a German one, and then had like these bracket thingies. In this one, which is an English speaking book, it's like these, I don't know what you call them, but it's like these like actual like 2 thingies, and they're both at the top. Whereas in German writing, if you write like an essay, at the beginning of a sentence, it's usually at the bottom and then at the top at the end of the sentence. But yeah, let's see actually what it's like in Harry Potter. Yeah, this one's also German. This is Harry Potter 7, and it's also these things. So I don't know. And the last thing I noticed, which you can already see, is that most hardcovers in German don't have dust jackets. This one's actually like not as usual to have like a dust jacket on a German hardcover book. I haven't bought a lot of English books, and I haven't bought any hardcovers, I don't think, just because they're more expensive than the paperback version, and I'm cheap. So I don't think I have any English speaking hardcovers, and I think from what I've seen on BookTube, most of them, if not all, have dust jackets, which to me was very surprising as well. So those are some things that I just noticed while reading. In general writing, it's also quite noticeable that German words are usually longer. Like if you write a text and you have a word count to fulfill, in English the essay is going to be shorter at the end because the words are shorter, and I think you also need a few more words to say something than you need in German, just because we have so many, I think you call them compound words, that sort of express something in just one word, as opposed to English where you need like 3 to say the same thing, or they're just split up, just because that's how the language works. So yeah, those are some things I noticed between English and German writing and books. And for me personally, the differences are mostly in the vocabulary. Because I started reading at a young age in German, I have a pretty big vocabulary that I built up through reading books, and then also just through having conversations with people and learning in that language. So I have a lot of very specific vocabulary in German that I'm just completely missing in English, which is very frustrating at times because I want to say something and I know the concept, but I can't say it. But that obviously also comes up when I'm reading, where if it's a specific topic, I don't know all the words. Overall, my English vocabulary is just not as big and not necessarily as eloquent. I don't know as many synonyms and all of that. Funnily enough, because I speak English so much, I do take a lot of English phrases into my German. So sometimes I will say something in German, but I use English phrasing, which doesn't make sense, and it sounds weird and a bit pretentious, but I can't really do a lot about it. And then I also sometimes just learn English words just because they describe something better than they do in German. And it's easier, and a lot of German people understand enough English to understand what I'm going to say. So it's still alright, although it might be a bit annoying for people who have to listen to that. I think overall for me it doesn't really matter what language I read something in, be it non-fiction or fiction. If it's a very specific topic, I might have to look a lot of words up, but in usual like fiction texts, it's it really doesn't matter in the long run. Sometimes there's complicated sentences in English. For example, I read Shopaholic by Carrie Fisher, and she is like a very, very eloquent person, and she uses a lot of sort of interesting sentence structures that are a bit more complicated that I have to think a bit about to understand. But that happens in German as well, so there's not that big a difference. Usually I like to read the original just to get the style and the tone of the author right. But now I'm in Germany again, so sometimes it's just easier to get the German copy and not having to wait for like a week to get it shipped, or it's more expensive to get it shipped and read it in English. So sometimes I just take the German version because of the accessibility, but usually I prefer the original, no matter if it's a German author or an English-speaking author. But yeah, that's a bit of an overview of how I treat my English and my German books, and yeah, I hope that was interesting. I'd be curious to know if any of you guys are bilingual, if you read in different languages. And yeah, that's it for this week, and I'll see you next week. Bye!